So welcome to Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. We're super excited for this episode because we are interviewing a good friend of ours, Josh Forti. Now, go ahead, Josh.
So we met Josh at a mastermind event called Offer Lab. And one of the coolest things is when he sat down in front of anybody, when he sat down in front of us, he broke us down as far as what we need to do social media. Like literally like we just paid him a couple $1,000s to do it. It was so much information, so good and so life-changing. And speaking to everybody at the event, he did the same thing with everybody. So he just loves to give and loves to change lives.
Yeah, loves to serve. And so we went to Offer Mind and we hung out, we went on a run, we chilled, we had great conversations for all hours of the night. So we know more about him. He has this really awesome, interesting backstory, his upbringing. He's accomplished so much already. He's owned multiple businesses. He's sold businesses. He is hacked and is an expert on social media. And now he's in this process of reinventing himself. So we're going to dive into all that. But first, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast.
Yeah, guys, I am so excited for this. And it has been really quickly that we've become friends. When was Offer Lab? What was that, May, I feel like?
Yeah, 25th, end of May.
Yeah, end of May. And now here we are. You guys came on my podcast. I'm on your podcast. We're like homies. It's great.
That's right. So Josh, tell us, our people who are in entrepreneurs, but in the yoga space. So yeah, you're an entrepreneur through and through. And tell us how you came to be that. What was your backstory? How did you get to where you are today?
Oh man, I don't know how people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that have been entrepreneurs their whole life answer that question, because I'm already trying to figure out how to answer that question. But long story short, when I was 11 years old, or over my 11th birthday, my family my dad quit his job, sold our whole house, packed everything that we had in the back of an RV, and we drove from Los Angeles, where we were living at the time, to a little itty-bitty farm town in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. And so from there, grew up on the farm, always had this entrepreneurial bug, right? Trying to start businesses on the farm and hustling and working. And long story short, after many failed attempts and going in and out of serving jobs and sales jobs and things like that, I finally was I'm going to go be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant, but I was I'm going to do it. And so for me, I didn't have any money. And I always thought that to be an entrepreneur, you had to have tons and tons of money and, or take out a loan or something. And it was, hundreds of thousands of dollars in overhead. And then I found this thing called Instagram. And, at first I thought Instagram was the dumbest thing ever until I watched a little masterclass, a little webinar, right? And they were you can make money on Instagram. And I was no way, this is awesome. And so I got started on Instagram and really just started posting valuable content. It actually started in kind of the motivational space, and then actually ironically moved into the fitness space, which I was not a fitness person back then at all. I had the worst diet, I had the worst habits, I had the worst everything. And but hey, got followers, right? So started growing pages there, started making some money there, and that kind of just blew up and led one thing to the next, So fast forward, gosh, it's been 3.5 years now. Started an Instagram agency, sold it to my business partner, or got out of it, I should say. Kind of a sale, made a little bit, a couple grand, but it wasn't really a sale. Parted ways, and then learned more marketing side of things. And, I'm really, really summarizing everything. But through a transition of a bunch of things, made a good deal of money and had a fair amount of success early. Very blessed, nothing earth-shattering or shaking, but earth-shattering or shaking for my life. You know what I mean? Coming from a farm town, a background of, making $25,000 a year, you know what I mean? All of a sudden you make $250,000 and you're oh my gosh, right? You know what I mean? This is insane, right? And so then had a quarter life crisis, if you want to call it that, kind of hit the top for me, and then just tanked because I didn't know who I was and I was super stressed out. I was working 18 hours a day. And that's when I really started focusing on success in all areas. And that's when I really started focusing on my mental health, my physical health, my eating habits, my mindset habits, building sustainable businesses, and things like that. So that was a year and a half ago, or just over a year and a half, when I kind of hit rock bottom. In the last 18, 19 months for me has been this process of learning about mental health, learning about, mindset, learning about physical health, learning about like everything involved in that, along with businesses, and building a business. I recently just sold my agency, and we're getting ready to go travel, which is super, super cool. But kind of my backstory is social media. My background is social media marketing, 5 million followers grown and managed on social media, about 3 million in revenue done. Not only personally, but for the clients and stuff that we've served. So it's been pretty fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's huge, man. So when you got into it initially and you found social media and Instagram specifically, was it purely like, man, I just want to make money? That was like the overarching, like, this is what I'm doing. I want to make money. I want to make money as an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anyone else. Or was there anything else that was there that was like, man, this is why I want to get into this?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much just I want to make money, honestly. But more importantly, though, it was I wanted to be free. And I think in my early days, the vision was I want to make a ton of money, right? But the immediate, like the ultimate driving factor, when you look at human psychology, which I'm huge on, there's two driving factors in every decision that every human makes. We either want to move away from pain or towards pleasure. And that moving away from pain is a much stronger driving force. And that was what it was for me. The pain of not having money, the pain of not having freedom, the pain of, I had to report to a boss and I am not a good employee, right? Like I clash. I have a strong personality. And so when I first got started, it was, holy cow, I can make money and I could quit my job and I don't have to have $100,000 to do it. You know what I mean? And that was like this like earth-shaking, groundbreaking moment for me when I realized that I didn't have to take on debt or go into, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to go start a business.
Yeah. So you were saying like your first business blew up and you were like rock and rolling, and then it kind of nosedived, like life kind of nosedived for you. Like, tell us a little bit about what the struggle was, or what looking back at it now, what was happening at that moment that like kind of forced you into that nosedive and kind of hit you to rock bottom and have to rebuild again.
Yeah. So it was interesting because it wasn't, so my first, well, I don't want to say my first company. There was a lot of failed attempts, right? But my first, success was, an Instagram story, Instagram growth with an agency. And so we would, people would come in and hire us to grow followers, and we would like easy get 10,000 followers a month on an account, right? Like, and this was back in the days when you could do like 80% of stuff wrong and still grow. Now you have to do like 80% of stuff right and still hope you grow. So it's a little bit different back then, but we would go and do this. And so my business partner and I had two different visions for what the company was going to look like, which is why we split. And no animosity towards him whatsoever. He's gone on to do very well for himself, and I have nothing bad to say about him at all. But he wanted to go more the agency route, and I wanted to go more the education route. Like some people like want to have courses and do teaching because they think it's easy, right? And I'm like, if you think it's easy, you have no idea what you're doing, right? Like it looks easy because of, the profit margins are super, super high, right? And, there's instant deliverables and you have so much flexibility in what you can sell. But like to create a sustainable education business is hard. Like it is not easy. But I'm a teacher. Like at my core, at my root, like I love teaching people. And I've been blessed through a ridiculous amount of trial and error and trying and, doing it over and over and over and over and over again. I've been blessed to be able to learn how to teach really well. And I can connect with people and I can break false beliefs just naturally. Oftentimes I don't even know what I'm doing. Like it comes subconsciously because I've trained my mind so much to do that. And like, I'm just so much more intense and passionate about it than other people are. And like, that's an element I don't think you can teach, right? Like some people have that gift. And so that's why I say like entrepreneurship, to a certain extent, I think building a business is trainable. Like you can teach someone how to do it, and like coaching is important. But there is an aspect of teaching that like some people have that gene and some people don't, more so than others, right? And I think that's one of my gifts. And so for me, I wanted to go that route. And so when I pieced out from him, like I still had this element of like teaching, but I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so naturally, when you're a charismatic person that's putting out content, like I've been told many, many, many times that I'm just an interesting person to follow, right? And so I got people's attention. I don't know how I did it at the time, but I just did it. And so I had these big, huge clients coming to me, like Dave Woodward and Todd Dickerson and Steve Larson, and like big names that are like, hey, we want to hire you. Like, hey, can you grow our Instagram account? Because it was like this new field. So what am I going to do? Tell them no, right? I'm like, heck yeah, like give me the money, right? Like, let's go. Right? So that's what I did. And it was super awesome. And I served them really well. And, you know, they were happy with everything. And actually, I think every single one of them, I was actually the one that terminated the contract. And Steve Larson was the single hardest person to do that for, right? Like, that one was like a bullet. And I like almost didn't send the message and almost didn't send it because like I really liked working with people like Steve and Todd Dickerson and, you know, Dave. And like, these are like not only clients, but they were friends. And so, but I got to this point where I was working 18 hours a day. Like I didn't have a team. I didn't have systems. I was doing everything. And I was way too egotistical and way too prideful and way too arrogant to just ask for help, right? Like I wasn't about to go get coaching. I had made it this far. And what are you going to tell a 24-year-old blonde chotch kid that made $250,000? Oh yeah, go get coaching. I mean, like, did you make $250,000 25 or 24 years old? And it was just the worst. It was horrible. And like, I laugh about it now, but like I was super prideful, right? Like I was super egotistical. And so that was what inevitably led to my downfall, was the fact that I wasn't willing to ask for help. I was trying to do it all myself. And I was not healthy at all. It's like I grew up on a farm. You don't really have a choice. You just work, right? And like you just work so freaking hard. And so you have that in you. And then I've always been the go-getter. And once again, I think this is driven by my ego a little bit. Like I like to be the best. I am ridiculously competitive. So when everybody else would work 12-hour days, I'd work 16-hour days, right? When everybody else was clocking out at 8 a.m., you know, working the night shift, I was clocking out at, you know, 9:30, right? Like I would just always go and I would push the envelope. And so for me, like I was hustling. And I finally got to this point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's not sustainable. And it's always so funny because I'll never forget, like November of 2017, this is right before Funnel Hacking Live, like 3 months before Funnel Hacking Live of 2018. I remember sitting there thinking, something's going to break. You know what I mean? I don't know. Right? I don't know when, but it's coming, right? Like, and I knew that. And it was 3 months later, you know, like I pushed it out for 3 or 4 more months. And like, you know, you get through the holidays and it's nice because like I was away from family. So like I could still stay focused and hustle while all my clients were like kind of taking it easy. And so then all of a sudden like New Year's hit and then it was like the new year and then they're all hustling again. And you're like, like I can't take it anymore. And it broke. And that's when, you know, ultimately, so I broke, I canceled everything. And thankfully I'm the one that canceled it all. So I saved a lot of relationships. I did have to refund money. I did lose a tremendous amount of money. And I told, actually, you know Colton Woods, right? Colton's awesome. And I told him, for the listeners that don't know, Colton kind of runs in our circle. He's the brains behind Steve Larson from like a logistical thing. And I told him, I remember at Offer Lab, actually, that when I met you guys, I told him this story. I was like, I blew like tens of thousands of dollars, like trying to figure out my life then, right? Like flying from Vegas to Miami and staying in way too expensive hotels, like just trying to find something, right? And like just trying to figure the whole thing out. And when I hit rock bottom, I was like, I thought I had a good mindset. You know what I mean? And I remember like laying there on the floor of my apartment, actually behind this wall, like, and like just having the whole weight of the whole world on my shoulders and like going like, now what? And when I canceled everything, I laid in bed for like 6 days and like just tried to figure it all out. And it was this weird, like this weird sense of, I don't know what to do. And it was the first time that I had felt that since I started my whole journey. Like I had felt like that a lot beforehand, but not since I had started making money, you know? Yeah. Like I was used to getting a $520 paycheck every couple weeks, right? Like or every week, like I was used to be really like broke, right? Like, and then I had made money and now it's not, I mean, I had money in the bank, but like when you go from getting $50,000 a month to like $2,000 a month, like that's a radically new idea. And I was just like broken inside. And I was like, where do I go? Like, what do I do? And I remember laying there thinking, if mindset's the answer, then I don't have a good mindset.
Mm.
And I've got to figure out what that looks like, because I thought I did, right? Like I was convinced that I was killing it, and I was convinced that I was on my way to the top. And all of a sudden now I wasn't. And so that led me on this journey to, I ultimately started the podcast from there. It didn't come for almost 8 months or 9 months later, but the podcast, when you listen to the intro, it's like, my big question was, what does it mean to be successful in all areas of life? Health, wealth, relationships, spiritually, like, and that was the big question that I've now am going to figure out.
Yeah. So it's almost like hitting rock bottom, Josh, forced you to look at all the areas, that it wasn't just about financial success. It was, I need to now look at why am I here and what's not right about all the other aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And that was also the birthplace of the Think Different theory, correct? Like that.
Yeah. That's where it came out of.
And we're like, okay, now I'm going to make this difference in my life, and I'm going to start teaching people how to do the same. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, and more so with the podcast, it wasn't even to teach others how to do the same at that point. Like, I knew it would eventually blossom into that, but it was just like, I'm an attention hog. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I want eyeballs on me. Like, having an audience changed my life. Like, I'm not going to lie about it, right? Like, it's awesome. You know what I mean? But like, I had a heart to help people. And I was like, I bet you I'm not the only one here. Maybe no one else has it this bad right now. I'm sure someone does, right? But like, maybe my audience doesn't. But like, they're asking me what I'm changing. And they watched me go through this. They don't know all the details, but they're watching me evolve. And so I'm like, I'm just going to start a podcast, and I'm just going to tell my story. And I'm just going to go figure it out. And I haven't made a dime from my podcast yet. You know what I mean? And like, just teaching people what I was doing, like sharing the story, like, and I just tell them, I'm like, I hope this betters your life. Like, I'm not gonna create content specifically for these people yet. Like, I'm just sharing what I'm going through, and I hope you guys can resonate with it. And it took me, it was 6 months before I started bringing people on. I did 3 episodes a week for 6 months solo, which is a lot harder to do than it sounds.
Yeah, no, like, if you're listening to this and you don't do a podcast, it's hard to put your mind in the place that what's required to be able to fulfill on that 3 days a week. Now, we're doing right now 1 day a week, and we're like, all right, it's manageable. We can do it. Triple that, and we're like, we're crashing and burning. There's no doubt.
Right. And so, and like, the dynamic of, and I'm not trying to like downplay you guys at all or whatever, but like, the dynamic is different when there's 2 people, right? Like, when there's one person, like, I like having other people there. It's way easier, right? And like, I'm the live stream dude. I live streamed my way to success, more or less. Like, what put me on the map was I live streamed for like, I don't know, it was like 200 and some days in a row, right? Like, every day. I didn't miss a day, right? And like, that really set me apart, because people like couldn't get away from me. I was just in their newsfeed all the time. Yeah. And so for me, like, doing that was great, but I was able to have conversations because people could talk to me in the comments. And so that was what I was used to. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in front of a mic and I'm staring at a wall, and I'm talking, and there's no feedback coming back. And I'm like, well, this is radically different, you know? And so like, going through that, it took me 6 months to really find my voice. And I always went back to, Gary Vaynerchuk. What Gary Vaynerchuk said was like, you just keep putting out content, and you just keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And I'll tell you, there were so many days when I'm like, no one's listening. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're getting downloads, but I'm like, where's the feedback, right? I'm promoting this on my Instagram. I'm talking about it. I'm doing it. And like, I've got followers, right? Like, I had 20,000 followers when I started, 25,000 when I started this. And I'm like, why aren't you guys interested? You know what I mean? Like, and I would get great feedback in person, and every now and then, like, people would be like, dude, I love the podcast, when I would ask them. But I was like, why aren't people resharing my content, right? Like, why aren't people tagging me in stories? And then like, 6 months into it, that's when it started happening. And it was like, one person would reshare, and then 2, and then 7, and this. And now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're all starting to come out of the woodworks, right? And like, oh my gosh, like, my podcast is actually doing something. And it took 6 months of, it was 100 episodes, every, and like, that really, really changed. And it was just me sharing my journey and sharing my story. And I was building a business at the time, right? Like this was not my source of income. So like that on top of a business, which actually I think gave me content, right? Like I could just share the struggles of that. But it was like, I'm going through these mindset shifts. I'm going through my identity. My brother died during the time of it too. Like that's a whole, like that will mess you up. And like, so like sharing the story, like trying to be in the headspace to lead, it gave me like my podcast became this outlet of just, I was able to just share my thoughts unfiltered. And if people wanted to judge me for it, great. Like just don't listen. You know what I mean? Like I was just trying to figure out who I was. And because like we have a pretty solid group, like ever since I started, because we look at like the metrics and the data and like downloads are going to be all over the place, right? Like some days you'll get like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of downloads. And then the other day it'll be like, oh, you got like 170 downloads today, right? You know, like it'll be like all over the place. But the one thing that I look at is like unique listeners, right? And ever since I started, once we kind of leveled off after the first month, like there's been this core group of like 300 to 400 people. And like, we'll go and 1 week we'll have like, a couple thousand unique listeners. And the next week it'll be like this, but it kind of stays around that. There's always at least this 400 core group, of listeners when I first got started with it, that has stayed with me like right from the beginning, like right away, like there's 300 to 400. And I was like, those 300 to 400 people get to watch me evolve. And you know what? And like Russell Brunson talks about like your core 1,000 fans, like a 1,000 true fans, 1,000 true fans. And I'm like, I know you guys are part of it, and I thank you for that. And I would tell him that like on the podcast. I'm like, I'm figuring this out. And someday we're going to be big. And someday it's going to be awesome. But right now, I'm just trying to figure me out. And that vulnerability allowed me to heal myself and allowed me to go and, like I used to high key make fun of yoga. Like I used to like just think that was for lunatics, right? I'm like, you do yoga? Okay, right? Like, and then, like my girlfriend, she would do it, and I would do like yoga practices, and I don't claim to be like a yoga professional by any means, like even remotely, but like the breathing exercise that I would do and the meditations that I would do and the stretches, I was like, this heals me in ways that like, medicine wouldn't. This brings this sense of calmness that relieves stress, and that like I can take so much more stress now because I know how to just channel it out of me, right? Like it's like it takes me, I process it and I push it out, right? And when you figure out how to do that, like that changed my life. And so this podcast was like my mental yoga, right? Yeah. And the physical side of things as I was going through and just like sharing my story. So it wasn't even so much to teach at the beginning. It was just to share. And now it's grown into something that's super cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I just want.
Yeah, I want to stop for a second and just highlight for the listeners, like
some of the gold.
Yeah, that was just like expressed, which is like one, the struggle is real. Like I don't care. We all have a blind spot into other people's lives that we don't see. That any successful person, whatever success means to you and to them, like is riddled with failures. Is riddled with waking up and not wanting to get out of bed because you don't know what you got to do that day to make it work and make yourself like go for the next mile and have no idea. Two, to continue to put out the message, even when you don't know exactly what the message is, but to document the journey allows people to follow you in a way that is authentic and real. Because I think for what's really, really important is that most people want to present themselves as perfect and I've got it figured out. And until I've got it figured out, I'm not going to put my message out because I want to be bulletproof. Mm-hmm. And the real truth of what you said is the vulnerability to be willing to say, listen, I don't know. I don't even know if this is for you yet. This is for me right now. But to still continue to do it is the key to success, because in the process of putting your message out, of being willing to say, listen, I don't know. That's what people are like thirsty for.
Yeah.
Real, authentic, genuine, like human emotion, not some, sugar-coated, polished BS that people are putting out there.
Yeah. And I would also say like when you don't know, because like I see a lot of people that they'll take that and they'll be like, well, I just don't know. And then they'll go tell it to their audience. They'll just be like this emotional mess, right? And it's like, okay, that's right. That's fine. Like you can be emotional and you can share, but I would also add to that, like share the vision, right? Yeah. And when I would get on there and I'd be honest with people and my Instagram stories, I'd be like, guys, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what's going to make the podcast grow. I don't know where I'm really at, but I do know one thing, that this podcast is like the vision that I'm going is we're building something big and we're going to go solve life's big problems. I don't know what that looks like yet, but this is where we're going. And when this vulnerability tied with a vision, tied with this thing of just like, I don't know how we're going to get there, but I know what I'm after. Right. Like, and everyone's like, well, I don't know what I want out of life. I don't know what I want out of life either. But you know what? I know what's important to me. And when it's important to me is finding truth. And what's important to me is knowing truth. And what's important to me is making a positive impact in the world and asking big questions in life. And so I just shared that. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know if it's going to be a podcast forever. I don't know if it's going to be this, but people, buy into that. And it was so cool. Like even just yesterday, I made a post in my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group of 30,000 members. And it used to be like just this raging Facebook group. Like it was so engaged. Like I would post in there and I'd get hundreds of comments on like every post or whatever. And just through my whole life crisis of everything and whatnot and starting these businesses, like that kind of died. And so the engagement isn't great in there anymore. Right. And so I made a post in there, I think it was yesterday. And I was like, should I kill the group or should I, bring it back to life? And the amount of comments of people that were just like, well, whatever you do, I don't care. Just like, tell me where I can follow you. Or, hey, Josh, like, I'm just a fan of you. Like, I don't care about the hook that you use to get me into this group. I'm following you. And I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. Right. Like, I don't know why you're following me. Like, I wouldn't follow me. I don't think I'm that interesting. But all these people, like they connect to you emotionally when you have this bigger vision. And, for us as entrepreneurs, especially, I think that people in the yoga space too, like really get it. Like, we're called to a bigger purpose. Like we understand the spirituality plays like this huge part in our lives, especially in entrepreneurship, right? Like what's going to set you apart from the other businesses out there, the other yoga studio, the other teacher, the other whatever is just like you just being vulnerable and being yourself, right? And just being like, I don't know, but here's where we're going, right? Like, and I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to, this, and hope you can come with me. And that's how I have a sales program, right? Like I teach sales and like in that group, I went in there and I was like, guys, it's not perfect yet, but I want you to know that like, even though I don't have it all figured out, I will not stop working until I do, and I'm going to commit to serving you no matter what. And I hope that I can earn your trust, right? Like you've given me money and I'm not going to let you down. Right. And like people respect that, especially in today's world, because in today's world, like it's super simple to get someone to give you money, right? Like you can connect with anything. So like they have 72,000 options. So when they buy from you, give them a reason to stick around. You know what I mean? Like be different. And the way you do that is your single greatest differentiation factor, like is you. And like, we all have that superpower. And it's like, oh, well, if everybody has the superpower, then nobody has it. I'm like, this is the one thing where that does not actually apply. Right. Every single person is different. Like nobody has the same story, and people are like, well, no one's going to relate to me. Yes, they are. You know why? Because we relate in what? We relate in emotion. And there's only so many emotions that every human being can feel. So like, while we all have our own unique story, we all can relate on this human emotion spectrum because we all know what pain feels like. We all know what sadness feels like. We all know what happiness and excitement and desperation and inspiration, like we all know what those things feel like. And so if you can use your unique story and people just buy into that, they're going to have this emotional connection to you that they're never going to want to look away. And if you can just bring that intensity and bring that being like, here's who I am. And if you don't like it, there's somebody out there that's going to. And you do that with just love and passion and just people will stick around for it. And it's just so funny to me. And I don't want to get political here. I mean, unless you guys want to, I'm happy to talk politics if you want. I'll talk about it all day. But like, if you don't want to go there, this is not a political statement. But it's always funny to me because I'm a pretty vocal person. I am pretty open in my support of particular candidates, right? And there have been people that just rail on me. I mean,
we've seen it, John.
Just and you know what? When I put out my offers and when I offer my strategy sessions, guess who are the people on there signing up? Right. And like we recently did a push, and I was like, there are 3 of you on here that absolutely just hate my guts on the internet. But as soon as I'm here to help you, you're right there. People buy into you, right? And if you're truly yourself and you're truly authentic, deep down inside, as much as people will never admit it, they are able to look past differences to follow you. They might hate you, right? But they will come around if you flip-flop and you change, they're not going to, like, no one's going to care. But if you stay the same to say, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm headed, and yep, here's how I'm getting there now. If they buy into your vision, yeah, like I've flip-flopped all over the place. I flip-flopped from Instagram to Facebook groups to social media to podcasting to sales to funnels. But you know what's all been the same? My big time vision of where I'm going. And that's what people buy into. So sorry about that little rant there, but like people need to understand.
It was gold, Josh. It was gold. If you're listening right now, you like go back and listen to that again, because that was brilliant. That was brilliant.
So let me ask this though, because it's true, like to be your authentic self and to present that and hold true to that is like, what is the biggest magnet that you can hold up to attract people to eventually follow you, buy from you, whatever it is that your end goal is to help them, right? But at the same time, there's this big push to model others and to, have a framework that you've learned from others. And then like, so where do you balance the two of like, it's in the entrepreneurial world of like, okay, I want to, success leaves a trail. So I want to model the people that are successful and do what they're doing now, but I'm also like have to be an individual and express myself in my own unique way. How do you balance that?
Yeah. So do you guys watch football at all?
A little bit here and there.
A little bit here and there. So like, I don't know if this is the best analogy, but it's the one that first came to my head, right? There is a set of rules that every team in the NFL must follow by, right? There's a playbook, right? You've got a field, you've got rules, you've got guidelines. There's a framework upon which you run your team. You've got you got 11 people on the field, right? Offense, defense, whatever. But the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots are two very, 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 very different teams, right? Yes. One is like the most dominant team of all time ever. And the other one, and Cleveland Browns, Miami Dolphins, like some of them just suck, right? And they're very different. Their offense looks different. Their dynamic looks different. Tom Brady is a different human being than any other quarterback. You know what I mean? Like they're just different. They all follow the same framework, right? It's all the same stuff. Like they all have the same materials to work with. But Steve Larson, I think, said it best when he was on the Offer Mind stage 2 years ago, not this past year, but the one. He said, success is 80% frameworks and 20% you. Okay. So there is a piece of you that you get to be free to express your own creative genius. And then there's like 80% of it that you just follow the frameworks. A skyscraper, every single skyscraper ever built has an amazing foundation, right? It has to. It all has to have pillars that hold it up. It's all got to have windows and, meet all the codes and requirements, whatever. Yet skyscrapers can look radically, radically different inside and out. But the fundamental foundational principles of how to build a skyscraper don't change, right? So when you're being yourself, like there are laws of influence. I wrote a guide called, and I don't want to pitch here or whatever, but like called, it's a sales framework, right? And it's called the Ultimate Sales Framework. And it talks about the 8 principles of influence, right? It's free. I'm really not pitching you, okay? But it talks about that. And when you understand human psychology was the same 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, today, and will be in 20 years or 1,000 years for as long as humans are around. Like human psychology and decision making is not going to change. Same principles with business. The principles upon business don't change. The way we deliver those principles, the way that we build the business, the way we use those may, but the core foundation doesn't. So what you do is you model the framework. You look at it and you go, okay, I know that I need to provide value. That's the thing that we all have to do. How you go about doing that, that's up to you, right? So I know that I need to go and have a core offer to build my business. How you do that might look very different. Like my core offer may be a $5,000 offer. While somebody else's core offer might be a $97 offer, and they're selling to masses and I'm selling to high profile business owners, right? So like the way that you go about your messaging or whatever, like it has to follow psychology and it has to follow the frameworks of business, but you get to deliver that in a way that's uniquely yourself. And some people buy into, like, remember there's 7 billion people on the earth, right? You are not unique, right? Like you are unique because you're you, right? But so is everybody else, right? So like my point is like your audience is out there. And so when you go and just become uniquely yourself, but model what's working, then you get to basically build your skyscraper and make it look however you want it to look, but still make sure that it's not going to fall over when the wind comes, right? And when the storm comes. And that's what ultimately allows you to be different than everybody else. I'm really weird. But if you look at my business model and my success, you can draw parallels to every other person that's had success. It's just delivered differently.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So let's pivot a little bit. You kind of talked about it. You've been into positive psychology. You've been into like, you're getting quantum physics, you know, neuroscience, and you've been deep diving into all of that, right? So, and this is a big question, like of all the information that you've gathered, what's like one or two of the lessons within one of those that has been like I know it's tough to distill it because it is, John and I, like one of the things, like we're cut from the same cloth because like we love those topics and we dive deep into it. It's really all about yoga, but that has impacted your life, your business, like generally had the biggest impact on you.
I wrote a book or a guide called Mind Shift Playbook, 69 pages, I think, like just under 70 pages, talking about the 5 biggest shifts in my life that ultimately led me to where I'm at today. And I would say the 2 biggest ones there, I'll start with the one that is less profound sounding, but is more of an act. And that is objective thinking. Objective thinking probably changed my life more than anything else ever in my whole life ever, except for maybe my faith. Objective thinking allows you to see clearly when nobody else can or nobody else does. Objective thinking allows you to look at things for what they are, not for what you want them to be, not for what they are positioned as, but it allows you to have clarity to see facts. And when you use objective thinking, you can look at any situation and you can remove yourself from it, even if you're involved in it, and you can look at everything, including your emotions, as facts. Okay? So when I look at a situation, I can be like, oh man, that situation is so depressing. No, it's not. That's how you feel about the situation. So when I use objective thinking, instead of looking at that situation and going, oh, that situation sucks, I look at the situation for what it is. And one of the facts of that situation is that situation makes me feel sad. So that emotion now becomes a fact, right? That's how I feel about it. That is simply a fact about the situation. Now I can take a step back. I look at a 3D version or a step back version of the entire situation in life. No matter how small or how big, I can look at the world. I can look at everything through a lens of objectively and take myself out of it. Think of it like looking down from outer space, right? Like if you've ever had an out of body experience, that's what it's like, right? You look down and it's like, oh, here's what it is. You look down from a plane and you see all the cars and everything moving around. You kind of have a different perspective of how the city works, right? That's what it is that you're doing. That single greatest thing freed my mind more than anything else because it allowed me to go, all of marketing is crap. All of politics suck. Everything that's out there is literally just a big ploy to make you do whatever it is that they want you to do. Now, are those things bad? Well, look at it objectively. We can say that some people think that those things are bad and some people think that those things are good. But once again, those are simple facts about this scenario. So we look at that and you can now take every situation and flip it on its head. And you can go, oh man, I just lost $100,000 and I'm $20,000 in debt now and my business sucks or whatever. I step back and I look at it objectively and I go, okay, that is one fact in the grand scheme of life. How does that fit into all these different pieces? And now I can have a much more clear picture of what I need to do moving forward. And when you look at things objectively, it's literally, and it's weird because it's actually like this. It's literally like stepping out of the matrix, right? It's literally like breaking free and removing yourself from that. So while everybody else is caught up in their emotions and how they feel and all that, you get to be like, peace out, be right back. Whoop, take yourself out of the situation, be like, yeah, those emotions aren't great. And I might want to feel that way, but I shouldn't. Whoop, back to reality. Here we go. I'm going to change my emotion now so that I can get to the result that I want to. I think that is the single greatest skill that I think I've learned.
That's awesome. Let me pause you real quick.
Yeah, because there's a second one there, but yeah.
What you just described is like Yoga 101, present moment awareness, being able to detach from the emotional content of a situation to be able to look at it objectively, because each moment is called, like a decision is called for. And if you can be objective, just like you're saying, you make better decisions, which means you change literally the course of your life. So now it's great, but how do you do that in like practically in the moment of emotion when you feel like you're called to be like pissed off or angry or, because isn't there an application to that? The concept, awesome. But how do you apply that in the emotional moments of your life?
You start small. So I didn't start, I used to be I got mad a lot I grew up and, certain, like my dad, I love my dad to death, but he used to struggle with anger a lot. He's totally radically transformed human now. And he's one of the nicest, kindest, things, whatever. But like, I used to struggle with anger too. Like I'd get super pissed off and upset about stupid things. Right. And I'd yell and scream. I'm like, ah, but I didn't start using objective thinking right then and there in that moment because I didn't know how. So what I did is I started small and I created a ripple effect. So I asked myself simple questions of like, why am I doing things? Like, why do I eat the way I eat? Let me look at that, right? Why do I go to bed when I go to bed, right? Like, why did I get, and sometimes I had to reflect and look back at things. I'd get super upset and I'd be like, why did I get upset at there? And so then when I'd go into a situation and I'd be like, I wonder if I could predict what I would actually do if something came up. And I'd be like, if so-and-so were to say this, I would react this way. Why? Right? And I would start to look at like kind of these trigger points, right? And we're going to talk about, actually the next one kind of ties into this as well. But like, I started doing it at this very small level. And when I started to realize that, I'm going to have to go into the next one here, but like when I started to realize that like we're kind of pre-programmed to do what we're going to do, right? Like our identity, our subconscious mind, and like we're 80%, 90% of what we do is kind of pre-programmed, right? Like you don't really have a decision about the next one. So if you can rechange that programming, and that starts by little tweaks, you're not going to go and, eat an elephant. You're going to take the first bite though, right? Like that's how you go and do it. It's not a one just big swallow it. So like you go and you start on a daily basis, and it takes time. It's not like you just snap into it, right? Like this was months and months and months of the making that I had to do this. You just go and you start to identify these little things of like, man, I got to rail on John here, man. Like, man, that Zoom was not working when we recorded this. His computer sucked, man. We didn't have audio. Then he wasn't recording. Then it's so like, I used to get pissed off about stuff like that. I'd be like, oh my gosh, wasting my time, blah, blah. Why am I getting pissed off at that, right? Like what would need to change for me not? Why is that so upsetting? And then I just look at it objectively and go, oh no, well, how can I use this as a teaching moment? How can I use this as a learning moment? And like, when you take back an objective thinking and you look at the big picture as a whole, you start to realize that all these little moments make up big moments. So if I can start to change the little moments, then when I get to the big moment, my subconscious mind is going to be programmed to not react in the way that it used to react. Now it's going to be more programmed to react in such a way that is going to use this as a learning lesson rather than get pissed off and, be super upset about everything. So like starting small, and it sucks because we all want to change immediately. I get it, right? Like I want $1 million tomorrow and I want to be the perfect human tomorrow. And I'm going to want to be the grand yoga master, right? Tomorrow or whatever you call it, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like I want to be that person now. But you can't get there. It's a little incremental thing, just like everything else in life.
Yeah. And so programming the mind is the second piece.
So
Identity. Identity
is the second piece. So like identity / the subconscious mind. So, by the time you're 30 years old, the subconscious mind makes up, depending upon who you talk to, 70 to 90% of everything that you do is subconscious, right? So the way that you think, the way that you act, what you do, how you talk, everything is subconscious. Where you're going to live, the choices you're going to make, everything, you just do it because you're programmed that way. And I apologize. You're just programmed that way. So you look at that and you're like, okay, well, how do I change my programming? Like, what does that really look like, right? Like, why is my subconscious mind doing that? And it's doing that because it has been programmed in the way that it's been programmed. But what's causing me to go do something? Because I know that I will do things that are really, really hard because they are me, even if I hate them. For example, like it might be, and this is a perfect example, okay? It might be negative 20 degrees outside and it be so freezing, ridiculously cold. And I'm all nice and warm, cuddled up, whatever. And I want ice cream. Right? Like for whatever reason, I want ice cream. And that's just part of who I am. I'm an ice cream addict. I love ice cream or whatever. No matter how cold it is outside, I'm going to go get that ice cream, right? Because that's part of who I am. I am just an ice cream fanatic. And every Thursday night, I've got to have my Dairy Queen. So I'm going to bundle up and get warm or whatever, when I would not normally do that. Most normal, sane people wouldn't. Yeah. But now why can't I convince my mind to go do that same thing when it comes to staying focused on my business, right? Or all these things. And I was like, so I started to study this and I started looking at this. I'm like, what makes somebody, or for example, a drug addict, right? They will go to insane lengths to go get drugs, but they won't to stop doing drugs, right? They can't. So why? And I started looking at that. And when I realized that identity, which the definition of identity is your view about yourself. When your identity is wrapped up in something, your body, your mind will go to insane lengths to get that thing done because you believe it is part of who you are. And when you believe something is part of who you are, there's virtually nothing that can stop you, because your mind now says, no, that is who you are. You think that some snowstorm is going to stop you? You think that $100,000 in debt is going to stop you? You think any of those things are heck no, it's not, right? Because that is literally your deep-rooted belief about yourself. And so that's why, like, religion is so powerful, right? Because, like, for me, like, I am a Christian, right? And so, like, my whole life, I watched my parents or whatever. So, like, to violate something like that, or to do that, like, that is a huge, massive shift that needs to happen. So I started looking at that and I was like, well, what if I could just program my identity? That'd be pretty sweet, right?
Yeah.
And so when I started realizing how identity works and how identity shifts and how habits will, go and change your identity, that fundamentally changed my life. And so when you can understand how identity works and how to change your identity, you can literally become any human being you want to be. Like, you can accomplish anything that you want to. You simply have to take the identity of the version of the person that already has what it is that you want.
Yeah, that's gold. We just, Chris and I just finished reading a book called Essentialism. And in that, was Essential? No, it was Atomic Habits.
Oh, I've heard that. I just ordered it.
It's so good. It's a game changer. He said, you will not rise to your goals. You will fall to your systems. And you could replace systems with standards or identity.
Yep.
Right? We don't rise to our goals. We fall to our identity. It's exactly what you said. An athlete will always be an athlete, right? They'll always see themselves as an athlete. So they'll get up and do the run. They'll get up and do the workout. They'll go and do it. And we see people, taking on the identity of yogis, meaning I'm going to practice every day. I'm going to sit and meditate every day. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to do these things that allow me to thrive in my body and what I'm doing.
And the very reason people don't do things is because it doesn't align with their identity.
Right. And that's exactly right.
And so adjusting the identity first, becoming in your mind the runner, is what will then compel you when you don't want to get up and run, because I'm a runner. And that's an interesting mental jujitsu that has to happen to be able to.
Yeah. And I think one of probably the craziest or the most blatant example of that is if you've ever been around a mother who has just given birth, like their first child, right? And I got to experience this firsthand. One of my best friends, like, she recently became a mother, and like, it was way cool to watch, because the mama bear mode of like just caring and loving, like, she would do anything for that child because that is her child. And her thing went from I'm an entrepreneur to I am a mother. Right. Like, and and so like when you have that and you see that, you're like, whoa, all right, don't mess with mama bear. Right. Like, because that is her identity. There is nothing in the entire world ever that would stop her from protecting her child. Like, till death pulls her away, she would go through anything for that. And like, when you take identity that seriously, and in business, if you can create that identity for people to buy into, like, you look at Russell Brunson and the diehard, he calls them the diehard funnel hackers, right? And you look at what he's done in business, and like, Steve Larson, probably the most identity-filled person with ClickFunnels, right? Like, if you were to rip open my heart, it would bleed red and blue with gears inside. Like, that is an identity, right? Nike, the same thing. Like, arguably probably the biggest identity seller in the world, right? Like, or at least in America, right? Is Nike. And like, the brand that they created, like, listen, I don't wear Adidas. Compared to Nike, Nike's my thing. If Nike puts it out, it is automatically assumed to be good in my eyes, right? Same thing with iPhone. Same, like, that whole thing. You couldn't pay me enough money to switch to an Android. Like, you crazy? No way, right? And that's this. So that, like, when you realize that, I will spend disproportionately too much money on this stupid thing, right? I will spend $1,200 or whatever it was to pay for the stupid thing. Why? Because even though the Android is cheaper and they say it has better features and they say it was whatever, doesn't matter. I always laugh when Android users are like, iPhone 10 is finally has the features or whatever. It's finally catching up to Samsung's, whatever, 2 years ago or whatever. And I was like, and maybe someday Samsung will catch up to Apple when it comes to identity and actually building a brand, right? Like, you guys, you know what I mean? Like, you think features are stronger than identity? You're out of your mind, right? Like, who cares? Because we're not just buying features. That's not what makes the product. That's not what makes the person the person. People don't care. We live in a consumerism society. And so when I looked at all those things using objective thinking, and I'm like, people do stupid stuff based on their identity. So I needed to figure out how to go out and change my identity and how to become the person that I needed to become, which ultimately happens through, habit changes and changing your habits. But, that was those two things, objective thinking and identity shifts, are probably the two single greatest lessons that I've learned from a practical, normal human standpoint. I mean, quantum physics is kind of a huge deal, but that's the average human being, be like, go learn quantum physics. Okay, that's not practical, right? So,
the nature of reality isn't what
right. Just go study the whole creation and design of the entire universe, would you? Right?
Although it's actually a good thing to do for business.
Heck yeah, it is. It's awesome. But everybody can use objective thinking. No matter, it doesn't cost you anything. It's it's very practical. You can start practicing objective thinking today, right? You don't need to take a course on it or anything like that. You can just do it. And same thing with identity shifts. You can go and learn about identity. You can start to change your identity. Studying quantum physics is a lifelong trek to understand a fraction of a percent of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And as far as we're talking entrepreneurs now, that identity shift piece, that one little bit of information is everything in success or failure of business.
Yeah.
Because you're not connecting people on that level of identity. I don't care what you're selling. It doesn't matter, because you're not offering them what they really want, which is, I want to belong to a group that looks and feels like me, and that offers me the things that align with my values and my beliefs, period.
Yeah. And if you don't and I think the interesting thing too is creating the identity in your brand. Yes, you do have to be intentional about putting it out there and whatnot, but it just first and foremost starts with yourself, right? You ultimately set the tone for the identity of your brand, especially in a personal brand type deal, because people watch what you do. People ask me all the time, they're like, Josh, how do you just keep showing up every single day? And I'm just like, how do you not?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? What are you talking about? This is just my life. This is just what I do. So people would ask me, Josh, how do you live stream every day? I'm like, because I literally can't fathom not, right? If I miss a day, it would be missing a day of eating. Do you think about eating? No, you just do it. I live stream every day, right? I don't anymore, but you know what I mean? And so that was the identity that I have. I was the live stream guy. And so, Tai Lopez, I was watching an interview with him with Tom Bilyeu, I'm sorry. And he was talking about how a large majority of his target market is 18 to 25-year-olds, right? And, a lot of people thought that in business, they're the people that don't have any money or all this stuff and whatnot. And he goes, because 18 to 25-year-olds are still figuring out their identity and who they are, right? After the 25, 26 years old, you kind of have a set idea of who you think you are as a human, right? And the only thing that changes your identity, unless you're intentional about changing it, the only way that, say, a 30, 35, 40-year-old is going to change, because they're in a routine, they're in a rhythm, they have accepted who they believe that they are. Whether they like it or not, they've accepted it. And now that has been their identity. The only thing that changes that is trauma. The only thing that's going to change that is a massive traumatic event in their life. And, recently, back in March, I went through a massive traumatic event in my life with the death of my brother. And, I have watched how much that has changed my life, and I am 25, right? So my own identity shifts are oh, I can't imagine someone going through that identity shift at 40, right? When they've been in their zone for 15 or 20 years of just accepting things. And so to get someone to change their life, to change who they are, is very, very difficult the older that you get. It's possible, right? And it's going to take time, but that's why I'm always trying to do dramatic things. I just sold my company and I'm putting every penny that I have, more or less, into camera equipments and editing crews and everything. We're about to go take this huge world trip. It's crazy. If people would realize the behind the scenes of what's going in and the risks that we're taking, and I'm gonna be making posts about it shortly, about some of the investments and the risks that we're taking with everything. People would be like, Josh, you're an idiot. Why would you not just take the cash, invest it into a nice little something, and just get your payout and be safe for the rest of your life? And I'm because the second that I become comfortable is the second that I am unwilling to change, right? And if I'm not willing to change, if I'm not willing to shift and adapt, my identity needs to remain that I'm able to adapt. And if I let my identity go into this rhythm of, you know what? I wake up, I do my work, I come home, I watch Netflix. Nothing wrong with that, but that's going to prevent growth. And that's not who I am. I want to continue to grow. My identity is in growth. So therefore, I force myself through my identity to keep taking risk after risk after risk and hope that it goes right. And you know what? If I hit rock bottom, you know what my identity says? My identity says, we wake up the next morning and we do it all over again. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what you do. And so when you take that, now your life has changed forever. And I always just laugh when people are like, what if I fail? I'm like, if you're worried about it, if you fail, you're in the wrong business anyway. Like, it's like, you're gonna, man. Like, just wake up and do it again. Like, if you're worried about that, like, yeah, it sucks. Like, yeah, if you've got kids, like, you got to think about them and like make sure that they're protected and whatnot. But like, you ain't gonna make $1 million tomorrow. And if you do, you're gonna lose it all the next day. You know why? Because what comes fast goes fast. And you've got to build that up. So just like put your identity into fact, like be okay with you. You've got to be okay with yourself. If you're worried about what other people think of you in this whole entrepreneurship game, you're going to either A, just die and not make it, or B, be depressed the entire time. Yeah. Because I can look at my buddy, and I just did a post on Instagram the other day where I was like, winners focus on winning and losers focus on winners, right? Like, if I'm constantly looking to see what everybody else is thinking about me, it would be like, it's so easy. Like, I have friends right now that are my age that are making $200,000 a month. I'm making $200,000 a month, right? Like, I'm not doing that, right? So I'm like, I could look at him all day long and be like, well, I got to catch him or whatever. And as soon as I catch him, then there's going to be somebody my age making $400,000 a month. And as soon as I catch that, you know what I mean? And so like, you just stay in your lane, take your own identity, be okay with you. And you should be able to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you got 10 million bucks in the bank, or if you have $0 in the bank, basically have the same version of like opinion of yourself, right? More or less. And be like, I'm cool with me. And my identity is not going to change based on the amount of money that I have in the bank or the amount of success that I have. And once you reach that point, then this all becomes a game. And then it all just becomes, how do I build really cool stuff? And, you know, when you take this identity of an entrepreneur, of a creator, of a builder, you know, my whole thing is I'm a free thinker, right? I am the free thinker. And all my people were free thinkers, right? When you take this identity of a free thinker, you go, like, money comes and goes. And like, you got the internet now. You ain't got no worries, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why anybody's worried about anything anymore. I'm like, you lose it all. Who cares, man? Just go, you got the internet, you know? Like, you could be in jail and make $1 million as long as you have it. You know what I mean? Like, literally though, you know, like, you don't have to be anywhere. You can sit in a hut somewhere and make millions. So like, once you understand that and you go, all right, cool, what do I want to go build? Then you can just go and do that. But it all comes back from identity. But you're not able to see that identity. You don't understand what identity that you need to take. You don't understand like where you want to head until you learn how to use objective thinking, because objective thinking brings clarity, and you've got to have clarity if you want to know where you're going.
Man, it's a recipe for success. Everything you just said. We could just end it right there.
Good, yeah. Josh, people that to kind of bring that point home to the listeners, you know, people that are stuck in 9-to-5s that are striving for security, they can get fired tomorrow. Right? They don't have, it's a false sense of security. So this idea that I'm going to stay with a 9-to-5 because it's going to give me that sense of security and I don't have to fail and I don't have to actually try to build something myself. You don't have security there either. Right? And
like, even, yeah, I think that's so important. And the one thing that I would say to 9-to-5ers is like, don't get me wrong, I have done my fair share of hating on people that go to college and people that work jobs. All right. Like, I get it. Like, I've been rude to you guys. I don't really apologize because it serves a point. But if you are a 9-to-5er, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you want to become a 9-to-5 person that's successful and you want to have security, become a person that is worthy of not being let go. Right? Because like, there's always the bottom feeders and there's always the top feeders, even if there's 2 employees in your company. You know what I mean? Like, I have 2 employees that actually work for me, right? And, you know, like, if we were to have a month where I couldn't pay their, like we didn't make enough month in my business for me to pay their stuff, you better believe that it's going to come out of my pocket and I'm going to make, you know, pay for them until we get back on track. Why? Because like, they've proven themselves, right? Yeah. That they become indispensable. And so like, when you take the identity of a producer, right? Like, yes, you can have a 9-to-5 and still be majorly successful, but like, go out there and become the person worthy of that. Perfect example of this is Dave Woodward, right? Like, look at, I mean, that dude, he works for ClickFunnels, right? He's not the owner, but that dude has become so indispensable from ClickFunnels. Like, ClickFunnels wouldn't run without Dave. You know what I mean? Like, it just, so like, when you have that, all of a sudden now you become someone of value. So is Dave an entrepreneur? I mean, I don't technically, by definition, Probably not, right? But is Dave an entrepreneur at heart and understand that identity like way better than a lot of people? Yeah, because Dave has like made himself this person of value. So if you want security in life, become a person of value, because when you become a person of value, when you become someone that like when people are around you, their life is better, people will always find ways to be around you and to include you into their lives. So like if there's Great Depression 2.0 and everybody's out of work and like, you know, you lose your job or whatever. If you've been a top producer, if you've been someone of value, if you have proven yourself over and over and over again, guess what? You're going to be the first person to be picked back up.
Yeah.
People are going to come begging for you when times get tough. And that's why like, yeah, do I want to see the economy crash? No, but it's gonna, right? Like it's coming, like at some point. And so like, do I ever plan on working a job again? Okay. Like, come on now. But like, no, right? Like, no. But at the same time, when the economy goes to, you know, crap, or let's say I personally think that there's a chance that it's going to be worse than the Great Depression. Like, will it? Maybe not, maybe. But like when that happens, guess who's going to come running? The people that have the power, the people that, you know, are in control still, because there's always going to be those people. They're looking for the smartest, most brilliant people. They don't care if you were an entrepreneur or employee beforehand. All they care about is, can you help me right now? And when you're that person of value, you're going to be picked up just like that. And that's the person that you need to become, whether you're in a 9-to-5 or not.
Yeah. Amen, man. That's awesome. Man, I had like 1,000 more questions, but honestly, at that point, I think everything, if you're listening to this right now and like, it's literally everything. Identity is everything. Make yourself valuable. Make yourself, I don't care what job you're in, make yourself indispensable is so, so good. So we're going to finish this and we're going to ask you, what is it, 5 questions now?
Yeah, this is speed round.
Speed round. You ready for speed round?
Ready for speed round?
So ready for speed round.
All right. All right, you go first, bro.
All right.
Chris.
We'll go simple first. You just have to finish the sentence.
Ooh, yeah. All right, this is good.
All right. My favorite food is?
It's steak. I'm sorry. I know.
You don't have to apologize. You are on the Yoga Entrepreneur podcast. Remember,
A vegan steak.
Could it be like no bull steak, like tofu steak?
No, you want to know what the real is? A medium rare fillet. Like we're talking like, I'm so sorry.
Double down.
There is not a single food that I like a lot of food like that. I love pizza and I love I like healthy foods too. You know what I mean? Like but like there is nothing that is more delicious than just a steak. And to clarify, I grew up on the farm where it was 100% organic, grass-fed, no grain, free range. Like I eat healthy steak, right? Like it's not like antibiotic filled, you know, I don't go to this Walmart and buy my steaks, right? Like, so like it is a much more natural version of it. Sorry, all you people that don't eat meat.
You're good, brother. You're good.
But I love it.
All right. Number 2, the book everyone must read is?
The Bible. But if it's a non-religious book, I would say Psycho-Cybernetics.
Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yeah, I think that's single-handedly the greatest book I've ever read, non-religious.
Cool. All right, number 3.
Number 3, I'm happiest when
I'm myself. I don't know. I think I'm a pretty happy person. I think I feel most alive, if I can change that question just a little bit. I feel most alive when I'm teaching on stage.
Nice. Money is
a tool. It is the bloodline of what makes society works because it speeds up the process of exchange of value.
Good answer. My number 1 passion in life is
making the world a better place and showing people that they can break free and know truth and literally live the best life that they possibly can. That's my why in life. My why in life is to inspire people to break free, know truth, and live a fulfilled life by going out and doing what they love, making the world a better place.
Nice. Freedom means
the ability to, how do I want to say this? Freedom is discipline. Freedom is the ability to choose to do something and stick to it, and equally choose not to do something and go away from it.
Good answer. God or source, Use God. God is
love.
All right, last one. When people remember me, they'll say.
Gosh, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of things I can be remembered by. Here's what I would like them to think.
Yeah, what's your legacy? What do you want?
Yeah, I would like to be known as the person that thought differently about everything that I did, that sought truth above all else and lived in the truth that I knew to live. Someone that was completely sold out for God in whatever aspect that God revealed himself through truth. And someone that truly served others in a way that was so passionate and genuine because I actually cared, not because I had an ulterior motive to do so. And I would also venture to say that that will change slightly when I have a family. And I think that I would probably put loved his family as well in there, but I'm not quite at that stage of my life yet.
So yeah, so if someone wants to, continue to follow you and find you, where do they do that?
So we got yoga studio owners, yoga entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs that aren't related doing yoga and they need your help. How would they go about doing that?
Instagram is the best place to stay in touch with me on a daily basis. I post stories there every single day. I can't remember the last time I missed one. Like probably years. At Josh Forti, JOSHFORTI. And we're going to be starting a YouTube channel once I go on this world trip. We're leaving in like 21 days. I know 22 days. Something like that. It's crazy. I'm like freaking out. But I would say YouTube, but I would say just Instagram. I have all the updates there. So Instagram at Josh Forti, JOSHFORTI. And then thinkdifferenttheory.com. Thinkdifferenttheory.com is the podcast. You can check it out, listen on your favorite platform, all that jazz.
Yeah, it's awesome. If you haven't gone, go rate, review, and subscribe.
We had you guys on.
What's that?
We had you guys on.
Yeah, go search for that one and listen to it.
It's awesome.
But then rate, review, and subscribe, and just keep downloading them because it's just like it'll just change how you think about the world. It is so valuable. I follow them on like Facebook, on Instagram every single day, and it makes my world a better place.
Yeah, Josh.
And we try to bring on really crazy cool people too. Like, yes, it's entrepreneur related, and yes, but more importantly, it's about like changing perspective and thinking differently. Like today, for example, actually, you guys might like this one. We brought on a lady who she was told like she's going to be sick her whole entire life, and that basically she's gonna die essentially by like top doctors in the whole world. And she healed herself through holistic medicine and like is like normal now again. And so like people like that, we bring on like Dude Perfect, the big YouTube people, like their manager. We had him on there, Mr. Beast manager. We bring out like Ryan Stewman, Steve Larson's been on there, like big time free thinkers, people that are like really going about things and thinking differently than the norms. So there's some out there podcasts for sure. Oh, and I don't know if I can say this yet, actually, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're working on, and it's not confirmed yet, so don't hold me to it. We're in talks right now to have Jordan Belfort on there. Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street, baby. Let's go.
That's going to be epic if you get him on there.
Yeah, we're going to try.
Awesome. Nice. Well, man, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure. And man, I can't wait to see what like Think Different Theory ends up as at the end and what you're doing, your world trip, safe travels, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you guys so much. This was so awesome, and I appreciate you guys. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to come down to the studio sometime when I get back. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was an honor.
For sure, Josh. Brother. Thanks so much.
Peace.
All right, everybody listening, thanks. And remember, do the work, honor the struggle, make the world a better place. See you guys.
Yes. Thanks so much for listening to Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. Do you have a question that you'd like us to answer raw and uncut on the podcast?
If you want your questions answered, all you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 3 simple things.
1, rate and review, telling us what you think of the podcast. 2, in that review, ask anything you want related to yoga. And 3, if you want a shout out, leave your Instagram handle or name. And that's it.
Then listen in to hear your question answered live, raw, and uncut.
Join us next time on Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets Podcast.
Thanks.